Hello, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, depending where you are globally. Thank you very much indeed for joining our webinar, for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join this webinar, which has gained a lot of interest. The issue over here is quite hot and it's quite relevant. My name is Nav Singh. I'm the head of marketing and communications for the banking and capital markets vertical here at DXC Technology. The context of today's webinar is around single customer view and what does data-driven insights truly mean. It's nothing new. It's been discussed before. You know, many financial services companies, as you may know, are also wondering how they can create a single customer view and have that omni-channel approach of having a 720-degree flavor of what their customers are actually doing from the first stage they get in touch with a financial services institution right to the end and beyond to the recycling stage. Financial services companies must provide a more personalized customer experience. But what does that exactly mean? You know, how do you deliver customer insights, customer offers, and how do you launch and improve, maximize loyalty programs that derive from those? You know, they must also understand how to maximize sales campaigns to stay competitive in the market. And that's exactly the topic that we're going to be discussing today. You know, how do you connect that disconnected data? You know, is too much data good for you? Is it bad for you? And why is it bad? Joining me today on the panel is a set of series of experts from AWS and DXC. First and foremost, we've got Emre Kairama, who's the Vice President of Analytics and Engineering for the EMEA region at DXC. We've got Dennis Parker, who's the Partner Lead for Amazon Connect for the EMEA region. And then we've got Ade Debeshi, who is the EMEA Partner Lead for Financial Services at AWS. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. And so for the next 45 minutes, we'll be answering questions to the panel. At the end of this 45-minute session, you, the audience, will have a chance to ask questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat box, and we will endeavor to answer them at the end. So my first question goes to Eddie. Thank you very much for joining us from AWS. Key question for you is around single customer view. What does single customer view mean to AWS, especially to you when you're dealing with financial services? And how can a single customer view be applied across different customer touchpoints to realize the true potential and of how that process, you know, the companies can process the data to create a unique user insight?
Thank you so much for having me, Nav. Our view has been that we are really keen to work backwards from our customer needs and where they are along in their data journey. Customer 360 is an endeavor across our financial services customers, and it focuses on both creating a personalized experience, but at the same time identifying financial fraud, financial crime, and other anomalies that can occur during the transaction process. What we've commonly seen is that the barriers for our customers have been around the adoption, the collection, and the refinement of their data as they're processing it. Common asks from our customers have been, we want to create the right personalization, but we do not have the access, the control of this data, making it easy for numerous teams to take what they need, churn the data correctly, and then use it for the business purposes. AWS has invested in creating several services that make it really easy to stream external data sources, map and align internal data sources using ETL, and that's a service called Glue. But making it really easy to catalog the data and make teams find the data source they need to churn that data on the right database for the right job. We've seen common adoption of databases like Neptune, as well as our partner databases like Neo4j, which allow for the graph mapping of data that create for that 360 customer persona and allow you to identify both relationships, engagement, transaction, and find and trace how customers might have even committed fraud. What we've also seen is the common use of a publisher subscriber model. And so the topic that comes to my mind very often when it comes to building that personalized experience is how can we make sure the right data is available at the right time for the right teams. A common ask from our customers has been make it easy for us to find the data, make it easy for us to stream that data in, and make it easy for internal stakeholders to both publish the data that they'd like, making it masked and accessible when needed, and making the subscribers know, measure, and control what they're accessing, when they're accessing it. And this has really been the largest barrier that financial institutions have had when they're dealing with the personalization experience. Some examples of how we've seen customers resolve for these have been examples like JP Morgan, who've built a flexible mesh architecture, allowed for the publishing of data catalogs, allowing for the business owners themselves to become stakeholders. By making those business owners stakeholders, they control what they would like to catalog, how they would like to mask that data, and who gets access to that data for how much time. Subscribers of that data have been able to really pick and choose what they need, like a catalog, select and ingest the data to the right repository or warehouse that they need, and then analyze that data for personalization. Very often, this is an experiment that needs several modeling parameters to be tested, several versions of these models to be maintained and mapped, and that's where Amazon SageMaker comes in. What we've also seen is a huge adoption of this pattern with disruptive banks. We've seen this play out in the Asia Pacific region with challenger banks who have been able to create streaming architectures to make it really easy for their marketing teams and their analytics team to find that personalization of insights about their customers. An interesting case study that comes to mind is that of Mox. Mox is a challenger bank that was deployed by Standard Chartered Bank in Hong Kong. And Mox was a fantastic example of understanding how they can ingest their customers' data as it's happening, understand the transaction, understand the engagement on the mobile app as it's happening, but make sure that the data is masked and cataloged in real time so the right subscribers of the data are able to pull the data they need. We've seen that those who invest in those flexible architectures early on are really able to scale and get those business insights. There is an analytics study that was published recently on how business users are controlling an additional 30% of the budget that was originally allocated for technology spend. And so mapping to the business owner, mapping to the goals and business drivers of these business owners is going to be a critical goal for CTOs and CIOs. And so investing in the right architectures is a key goal that we've seen come across from our technology leaders at our customers. What I also want to call out is the way in which we've tried to construct a number of our support structures for our customers. And so the work that we've done with DXC when it comes to helping customers ingest market data sources, make it really easy for numerous teams inside the organization to access these data sources, connected into the trading platforms are something that we've co-developed and deployed. We've also built further integrations with leading ISVs like Databricks and Snowflake, who have continued adoption for building those personalized experiences. So I realize that I've kind of touched on the technology lens. I've kind of dived into what the common challenges of the CTOs and the CIOs, but these are the foundations that are needed when organizations are considering a broad personalization strategy. Once this is ready, it's very straightforward to take on higher order services like personalized, OpenSearch that AWS offer and build for that personalized experience right at the front end. So the end customer is getting a seamless omni-channel experience, but with relevant analytics that's along their need. So I take a pause there, but I wanted to share kind of some macro trends that we saw both at the challenger banking side as well as the large institutional player side. And I hope that the data message is right at the heart of that personalization story, and would love to dive in a little more.
Thanks, Eddie. You mentioned some interesting points over there, specifically the bank in Hong Kong and how you provide personalized services. If I may, before I go to the next panelist, ask a question of, from your experience, what impact has the pandemic had in terms of that data? How has that been utilized in terms of, provision of working from home, doing banking from home, online banking has increased? Has there been a certain pattern that you've realized in regards to how those unique user insights? So when we look at, for example, the branch, the customer, and the colleague, how has that affected each three of those segments within banking?
Yeah, absolutely. And Mox is a fantastic case study on how this went about and how the pandemic was a game changer for them. Standard Chartered, with its traditional banking ecosystems and channels, focused on the branch experience for engaging their customers. When they deployed Mox, they were able to deploy a fully digital native bank at a time when customers were not able to go in and engage with their bank. some very interesting statistics of how they went about is when they launched their bank, they were able to acquire 30,000 customers in the first month. That engaging experience was spread virally and correctly with the right marketing campaigns. They acquired 100,000 customers in the first year. And so what you saw was the acquisition of customers was rapid because they built the right experiences at the right time for a market that was evolving. Mox today has 400,000 customers. And so by being one of the first ones to market, building those personalized services that were digital in nature and correctly suited during the pandemic helped them really be a leading bank that the region needed. What we also saw was Standard Chartered continued and built on that pattern and have deployed a bank in Singapore that replicates that same model. And so what you see is large institutional players are building those challenger banks, building and repeating that model in numerous regions, and are taking those best practices of personalization and bringing those right features to the front across each region they deploy in.
Interesting. No, thank you for that. It's a good point you mentioned about the collaboration between the challenger banks, the fintechs, and the legacy banks, because you know, obviously, as we know, there's tons of data in the legacy banks. Challenger banks being born in the cloud, so to speak, are leveraging that in terms of data warehouse, how to kind of make that more ingestible and accessible. So thank you, Eddie. Really interesting. That takes me to the next point. I'm going to go to you, Emre. Is your point around utilizing the area around the afterthought that Eddie has provided as a potential transition into the branch? You know, are there any lessons that we can learn? Is too much data bad for you? You know, anything you want to share from a DXC perspective in regards to what your points are in regards to data, and especially I know that data metabolism is quite close to your heart. If you can please elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nav. From DXC point of view, our thought leadership from that side maybe seen a bit controversial to what you may have heard out in the market, because you've heard data is the new gold, data is the new oil. The analogy we use is data actually might be just like sugar for your metabolism. Without sugar, basically our bodies won't be able to operate. Our brains need sugar. But if you have too much sugar and your metabolism is unable to cope with that amount of sugar, you get diabetic. And that is similar to how in organizations, if the decision-making cultures, decision-making processes, and underlying structures are not correctly adapted, which we refer to as the data metabolism, then having too much data may not necessarily speed up your decision-making processes, but it may actually slow down your decision-making processes. I know that may sound a bit controversial, but if you think about it, it is quite true, because you can actually use data as an excuse not to make decisions as well. Just like a diabetic person, when their blood sugar starts fluctuating, would be willing to get more sugar. That is not necessarily helping the problem of their diabetes. In many cases, when the companies or organizations are having difficulties in making decisions, they go after gathering more and more data, not necessarily helping the decision-making problem from that perspective. But that doesn't mean that data is bad for your company, not at all. So the amount of data that is becoming available to us to accelerate the decision-making, to personalize experiences for our customers, especially in the financial services industry and in banking, you need to improve the metabolism of the bank to ingest that amount of data, to be able to cope with that amount of data, and to accelerate the decision-making process to get that 720-degree view of the customer, and also to be able to drive that personalization of the customers as well. And as part of the research that brought up the data metabolism concept, we have looked into what are the types of decisions both organizations as well as individuals are making. And if you think about it, there are three major types of decisions that are coming out. One is what we refer to as discover. So in discover mode, you're basically trying to identify opportunity spaces. You're looking for innovation. You're looking for new ways of doing things. And again, this is applicable for a bank itself, but it is also applicable for the customer of the bank. As a customer of the bank, sometimes I'm looking for discovered type of decisions, trying to find new products, new services that would be suitable for my situation. The second type of decision making, and this is where majority of the decisions happen, we refer to that as the develop. In develop phase, the speed is of essence. It's more about the speed and the accuracy rather than the variety of the information that is coming in. And there you would like to get as much automation as possible into the process and do not only provide the data and the insights, but also translate those insights into actions that can be taken almost instantaneously. So the automation of those actions come into the play next to the translation of the data into insights, but from those insights straight into the actions as well. And again, as a customer, just as an organization, develop is where majority of the decisions happen, and fast-paced decisions are of essence there. And then the third type of the decisions that occur is what we call defend type of decisions. In defend type of decisions, you're looking back in most of the cases. So here accuracy becomes extremely important, but also in many cases, these are driven by regulatory requirements. These are driven by legislations. These are driven by trying to understand what has happened and learn from them. And again, both as an organization, as a bank, as well as a customer, we have quite a number of those defend type of decisions. And here, reliability of the data and information becomes of essence. And also at the same time, throughout all those three decision types, especially when you're on the customer side, the right level of privacy, right level of security are very much on top of mind of the customers as well. And once, as an organization, we can actually adopt not only our processes, technology, but also the culture of decision making to be able to deal with significantly more amount of data by improving our data metabolism, then we can get much closer to taking advantage of all the data sources that are available, as well as the technologies becoming much easier to integrate into our business processes. And here again, our partner AWS has made a tremendous step forward from that side, providing very solid capabilities in a cloud-native way, which can be integrated into the right architectures, and those solutions can be implemented quite rapidly. But I would like to re-emphasize technology and solution architecture is important, but at the same time, we need to have that cultural and also the business process related changes in place to be able to take advantage of them.
Thank you very much, Emre. Interesting point you mentioned about the culture, and thanks for mentioning it, because sadly, Bashir Smaskahari could not be here for personal reasons. She was due to speak about the connection between the data and the culture and the contact center, because she's focused on the contact center part. And that's absolutely crucial when it comes to an omnichannel experience. So where does that customer, he or she, when they start their journey with that communication with a particular financial services institution, whether it be on the call, whether it be a visit to a branch, the contact centers come to, it's going to come at some stage of that customer journey. Emre, is there any chance you can maybe elaborate a little bit more about that cultural aspect, how that may relate to the branch in terms of that kind of relationship with the customer? Why is it so important? Because I know you mentioned the data metabolism part, but maybe if you can maybe humanize that factor of why is it so important from a customer perspective, especially we've got some building societies as well in our audience. So, you know, people going into the branch, it's a selling model that people use for applying for mortgages, for example. So why is that important?
Yeah, that's a very hot topic at our home as well. My wife is a professor of emotional robotics, so that's a very hot debate at home. From my point of view, and this is the point of view of DXC as well, we do not think that the implementation of artificial intelligence robotics is there to eliminate people or the human factor from the process. Actually, it is to change the role of the people throughout the process so that you can focus on elements that are more human rather than doing the routine and repetitive tasks from that perspective. At the end, I think understanding the expectations of the customers from that side, from their banks, is not necessarily hugely challenging, because we are at the same time customers of financial institutions. And one of the key elements we always expect is the experience we have being empathetic, the experience we have not necessarily being binary from that perspective. And that is where, again, the human element comes into the picture quite importantly. What we can do with all the data that is available and with all that personalization is to equip the agents that will continue to keep that interaction with the customers with the different elements of data and insights that are going to make their life much easier. And this doesn't mean that we will not necessarily automate many of the tasks, which is already happening, because again, I think not many people have been visiting their banks to make a wire transfer recently, right? So that has been an important task in the past. That is changing the collaboration. So we are interacting with our bank agents when we have more complex, more complicated challenges that we cannot necessarily address ourselves. And our expectation at that moment is not that they are an executor of a transaction, but they are more advisors to us. And we relate that very much because that has been the evolution of our industry from an IT services industry point of view as well. While in the past, our customers were looking at us to run their IT services, now they are coming to us with complex challenges of how to transform their business with the help of technology. Similarly, we are basically expecting that type of an experience from our banks as well. So it is not about eliminating the human from the picture, but it is changing the role of the human in those interactions, as well as where their focus is going to be moving forward, and equipping them with the right data and insights so that they can give them highest value in the most efficient, effective way, and also providing a consistent experience to the customers.
Super. Thank you very much for humanizing those that complexity and turning it into simplicity, and we really appreciate that. And I think that's a very, very good follow-on point for taking to Dennis, because Dennis, you see this day in, day out in your job at AWS. So it'd be really interesting to know, you know, what your thoughts around the approaches for assessing opportunities to optimize an omni-channel customer experience for financial services, banks, and building sites alike, including which feedback sources to leverage, for example. If you can maybe elaborate on that, please.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Nav. I'm going to lean in on some of the points Adi touched on at the beginning from an AWS perspective in terms of personalization and innovation when it comes to customer experience around the contact center. So, and I'll start with a quote from one of our financial institution customers. So, we aspire to meet our customers wherever they want to be. We've unleashed the power of 50,000 associates and unlocked innovative new capabilities for our customers. We're in an industry that continues to see dramatic changes, and our focus of innovation and thinking like a tech company to meet those changes head on. It's a matter of speed, agility, and meeting customers' quickly changing needs. And I think we've seen a lot of that, and Adi touched on this point originally. At AWS, we have this concept of working back from. So we're working back from the customer in relation to our Amazon Connect capabilities or our CCaaS capabilities. 90% of our features that we release come purely from customer demand, and I'll touch on a few of these during this segment. But it goes back to that point. If we're working back from the customers' examples and the changing demands of our customers, and we saw this accelerate during the pandemic, customer expectations almost become fluid. I mean, if we think back a few years about, it was pretty clear what the customers wanted. So if we were to look at, you know, why am I being contacted? Why are the customers ringing me? Is there an opportunity here to self-serve? Think of all the data points that exist around the contact center that allow us to come up with ways to improve our CX while still maintaining the satisfaction of the end customer. And one of the terms that we've seen more of in the market recently, again, especially around the pandemic, and it come across well in the Capital One example, where we aspire to meet our customers wherever they want to be. And it's this concept of consistent CX or consistent customer experience. We all work from home now. Sometimes we work from the office. We all work in different locations. How can I make sure that I don't impact my customer's journey or my agent's effort in any of those examples? How can I make sure that I give the agents all of the ability to serve the customer first time? I personally was thinking about this point yesterday. I can't remember the last time I was transferred in a contact center, and if you think about data enrichment and what's required to not do that, that we've come a long way for something that's now deemed as a kind of standard practice around contact centers. So if we look at that in a bit more detail, it's being able to give the agent enriched data about that customer contacting to make sure that they can serve that customer, give that personalized approach to the end customer. So, and that comes from data enrichment. We, within Amazon Connect, have the ability to ingest and dip from multiple internal, external sources to enrich any of the information passed down to the agent so that they can be served fairly and equally across all channels. If someone's having a bad time on web chat and then decide to call us, as probably a driver of frustration, we can see that. We have that information available to us. The agent can know that. Couple that with information such as sentiment scoring around analytics. If I were to evaluate Adi contacting me as an organization and deemed his sentiment scoring to be lower than a set threshold that proved he was happy across any of the channels, any of the ways he wanted to contact me, I have the ability to be proactive in either outreaching to Adi to satisfy his problem, or at least advising the agent when they come in that the previous interaction with this customer was deemed as low sentiment, they were unhappy. So we can make routing decisions within that to push that contact directly out to a agent, so retention agent, a priority agent, and it gives us that ability by enriching the solution with the data. The second quote I just wanted to give you is one that's really quite telling, and it's Amazon Connect lets us innovate at our pace. It is no longer a change request and a new solution to innovate for our customers. It's the flick of a switch. And I think this goes back to the point in relation to behavior and technology. So within the Amazon or AWS portfolio, we have the ability to allow you to test and try solutions. If you were to look at, okay, I want to use analytics to understand the top 10 reasons why I've been contacted this month. And that data can be used to define what your self-serve or deflection approach may be. So take that information into your decision making. Once you're done with that, you've made that decision, you don't need to keep using that solution. We can switch that back off. But if we were able to use that information to say deflect 7% of contacts on a specific line into your contact center, and we were able to deflect that. But from the analytics and the insights, we were able to know that we've maintained a consistent CX and a consistent level of satisfaction. If you manage to deflect 7% of your contacts based on the Amazon pricing model, you pay 7% less next month. So for us, it's all about how do you start on that CX journey. We're in a position where you're trying to transform customer experience, you're trying to migrate to cloud, you're potentially looking at CCaaS solutions. What is the right place to go first? And then partners such as DXC and Basher and the team have the ability to work with you to define, okay, what is the best driver of CX into my organization? Where should we approach first? What should we do first? And build out a roadmap that truly is yours. So you're in charge of satisfying what your customers want and taking that roadmap back into your own hands, which is a very novel position to be in, and especially when it relates to contact center CX.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Dennis. So I'm gonna ask that question that you really pointed on the sense that, you know, the customer experience should be an essential part of that data strategy. And if I may bring Adi in as well, because I want to keep this focus on AWS for the next 7 or 8 minutes, is really looking at, firstly, Dennis, you can elaborate on, you know, how can financial services companies, how can AWS and DXC assist financial services companies to truly help develop data-driven products and propositions, you know, deriving from the theory that's been provided by Emery and yourselves, and how that can enable a really facilitated dialogue for fueling change. So a good example is, like I said, if a customer goes into, he or she goes into a branch, or they call the financial services institution, they don't want to repeat the problem again. You know, I've got an issue with my mortgage, I've got XYZ problems. All of that information should be readily available, irrespective globally where that, you know, X conversation they have with their contact center, with the branch, or with the colleague. I personally feel, I might be wrong, I mean, just looking at the data, we're not quite there yet in terms of financial services. So what would be the initiative, say, for the next 12 months or foreseeable future in terms of trends to drive that growth into banking? Any kind of insights into that?
Do you want to take that one, Adi, first?
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. I think I really resonated with Emery's message on discover and defend. If we were to think about how organizations can really bring business value for their customers, at the heart of it lies what their business teams need. They want to find data about their end customers. They want to find the right customer, the right targeting. They want to know what is the sentiment, and that data does exist in the systems. And so discover is a very vital metric that businesses will challenge their technology teams to solve for. And AWS and DXC have actually built solutions and offerings here that can help demonstrate the value. But let's take an example. When you're looking to discover data, you're looking to find who are the customers who would be right fitting for a certain product that's coming to market. Are we targeting this customer during the right time, at the right point in their journey, at the right point in their life to identify this product for them? And then is it reaching them at the right time? And so all of this data does exist. It exists within the organization. It exists with market data sources. It might exist in social media feeds that are public data sources as well. And so bringing all this data together is a key goal that businesses have. When technology teams can understand that they can connect these dots, they really earn trust with their end customer, which is the business team. Now, in order to do that effectively, it requires a set of architectures, and these architectures can get really complex. And so, you know, you can have something that gets started off as a conversation, but it's a 6-month assessment followed by a year-long of implementation. But it's really important to start small. It's important to be very nimble and agile and get innovative. And so one of the things that we've built along with DXC is a game day, as we call it, which is a one-day exercise to say we can come into your offices, take data that you're trying to solve with, connect those dots and help you discover the right data set for the right job. And we don't actually work with the end customer data that you might be dealing with. We are able to bring neutral data sets like market data sources or historic transaction feeds or public data sets that have been released to regulators in the past. And so the goal is to help those business teams connect for that personalization message, but in a way that they can really resonate with how these numerous Lego blocks, as we call it, of AWS services can be combined. And together with DXC, we're able to run that. I want to go to the other side of that as well. So discover is so important, and how better to start that learning than with a game day. But when you're looking at defend, this is where a lot is on the line. Business stakeholders are concerned about regulation. They're concerned about how that can impact their end customers' experience. It can impact them in terms of fines that the regulator is not happy about. And so defending is an essential part of that data analytics journey. And so when you're thinking about defending your data, you really need to make sure that all the data is available, that there's been transparency in the way that the data was captured, the way the data gets published, and you have to make sure that the regulator is satisfied with the way in which you're keeping your data. And so there's a lot of asks coming from our customers in ways in which they can maintain these open channels inside the organization and with the regulator. And we're seeing the rise of clean rooms, which is making sure that the right data set in real time is captured, maintained within internal systems for flagging, but also the right data is compiled and the right reports are set up for the regulators to receive them in a both push mechanism as well as a pull mechanism. And so both discover and defend are kind of core business asks. And while it's a personalization story, it's really important that those right data sets are available with the right entitlement. So I guess I'm probably coming from it at one lens, and that's kind of where the institution needs to think about its data. But it's really vital at this time that customers think about this challenge, and let's get started quickly. There are these focused discovery days and game days that we can do together to help customers. I'll pass it over to you, Dennis, to kind of dive into that personalization side as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Adi. So just to echo your point, it's about starting small and understanding where we can go. So we do a lot of work and have built solutions out with DXC and the team in relation to this. And to echo Adi's point is start with the points that resonate. So personalization is great, but a key one around financials is compliance. So we've got the solutions available within the contact center to, if you want, analyze every single interaction to make sure that they satisfy the compliance requirement. So you're proactively defending or fixing issues before they become an issue from a compliance perspective. That can be a really easy place to start. And then understand the reasons why we're being contacted and what channels we're being contacted, to go back to the point before of, I don't want to repeat myself anymore into the contact center. So if you look at where your customers are contacting you from, how they're contacting you, and then look at starting small with the personalization. What data do we need to enrich that enough to increase our first contact resolution, to improve our CSAT? So I think collaboratively working together, looking at common use cases in the industry, areas where we know we can see quick success, and start small and use that as a method to build out back to the point that Adi made.
Cool. Thank you, Adi, and thank you, Dennis, for those insights. Really appreciate those. I think some of those issues that you specifically mentioned, we've had a series of these webinars also last year, and it's good to know a different flavor, a different stance to an approach to data-driven banking. So thank you very much, Emery, as well. Please do feel free to write your questions in the chat box. I'm looking as we speak. Please send them across. But we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so without further much ado, I'm going to head off to the Q&A session. So please do trickle in those questions to Emery, Eddie, and Dennis. But first question I have over here is actually for the AWS team over here. In regards to the future in terms of digital trends, exciting topic and quite timely beginning of the year. Without going into detail, can you please elaborate on the top 5 trends within data-driven banking that AWS has on the agenda? So who wants to go first, Dennis or Eddie? Either one. And Blair, yeah, you don't need to elaborate more into pending company and DXC?
So I think when it comes to data, 5 trends would begin to kind of vary by region and customer type. But I think there's a set of things that we're seeing that kind of resonate across. I think one is business owners within the organization are going to be very demanding and very focused on the business value of what they're investing in. So technology spend will be a direct measure of its business impact. And it's going to be a ask of every business team saying, if we gave you X spend or we made an ask of you, what is it that you're able to bring to us? And technology teams will need to quantify that. That metric will also include sustainability. So answers will not be alone around new customers generated, efficiency gain. It's going to be, are these the right choices for our organization? Are these the right choices for our planet and our society? And so measuring these metrics is an increasing ask. Very often end customers who are going to choose a bank or a financial institution want to know that these institutions are not investing in things that are against sustainability goals. And so business teams are going to make demands of features that are fairly technically complex, and they're going to look for measurable outputs for customers. And within that comes that sustainability metric as well. So I kind of called out 2 trends there. Another area that we're seeing a lot of asks is make it really easy for us to get access to what we need, and make it easy for that data to come in a streaming manner. And when you're looking at personalization, when you're looking at engaging experiences, all of us, as we work on social media, whether we work with our emails and our office tools, we're expecting those very engaging, simple to use platforms that we can access anywhere and on any device. And so that applies to data as well in financial institutions. And so we've seen a huge amount of adoption and increase of adoption when it comes to data marketplaces. We've seen that customers are looking for easily streaming their market data at the click of a button. They want to access alternative data feeds that might be satellite imagery to analyze how are the parking lots being used in malls in order to know whether a particular stock is performing or not performing. And so that could be a way to analyze alternative data. But making sure that that data comes in seamlessly, is easily accessible, and also that you're not paying for what you don't use, that's going to be extremely important. And so the adoption of market data and accessing that through marketplaces is on the rise. We've seen partnerships like Bloomberg and Refinitiv really invest in these areas and really make it easy for customers to get access to the data they'd like. And they leverage AWS and our streaming services using Kinesis Firehose, private link, and making sure that that data is ingested into S3 or streamed directly from a source data set as well. A last trend that I'll kind of call out is the way in which we're seeing building the purpose-built analytics warehouse. And so what we're seeing customers say is, we don't want to start constructing systems from scratch and spend months before we can start getting analytics. We want to press a few clicks and be able to access the data we need to get that personalization model running. And in order to do that, what we've seen is with the adoption of Redshift directly streaming from S3, which is the storage bucket, and Redshift will be the single place in which analytics is done, but also making sure that that streams into the AI and ML layer, which is with SageMaker, which is our model management platform. We've also seen this with our partnerships, and we're seeing partners like Snowflake, who has really built out a robust platform and an ecosystem to help customers adopt financial services models on Snowflake. So you ingest the data easily, you're able to model and manage those models on Amazon SageMaker, and you're able to make sure that the two systems are smoothly integrated. As an example, Snowflake, the CFO of Snowflake on an earnings call about 2 months ago called out that 80% of their workloads done on AWS. It's about 16% Azure and a little to GCP there. But it's really important to understand how the disruptive data warehouses are changing the industry, and the right data warehousing players are investing with AWS. We definitely have similar partnerships with partners like Databricks and Neo4j and so on. But kind of that purpose-built warehouse, which is pre-built for financial modeling, that is pre-built with those market data sets, that seems to be on the rise. And those same models apply into banking and insurance as well. So what I gave as an example for essentially capital markets is very transferable to banking and insurance. And that's kind of a macro group of trends that we're seeing coming from customers. Each of these are linked both for personalization, but also from regulation. So I'll stop there, but Dennis, maybe over to you on the other side.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Adi. I think I'll just dial in a little bit on what that means and what we're hearing from more specifically around the contact center. It's definitely, to Adi's point, in using data to quantify why we're doing what we want. So when I made the point about taking your roadmap back into your own hands, if that data is available with the solutions that Adi previously mentioned, we can use that to quantify that we're making the right approach. So we're using data to make that decision about where we think we should go. Compliance is still a huge factor for us around contact center, taking payments, compliance terms across all these channels. We're looking and seeing much smarter kind of self-serve options now, even in relating to loan submissions via chatbots and things like that, which then just add a new flavor to automating compliance to make sure that we're satisfying the regulators. And then kind of the other key common trend that we see, we talk about cost savings a lot from driving down costs, which is obviously a prime selling point of Amazon Connect, but we're also seeing a lot of requests from our customers in relation to churn reduction of their own end customers. So how do I reduce my churn of customer using data that I know about them and the different sources that Adi's already mentioned, to make better decisions about how to treat my customer, to make better decisions about how to contact, how to upsell to my existing customer. I made the point before on sentiment scoring. How can I use sentiment scoring to proactively reach out to a customer to mitigate a risk of churn or a risk of them becoming a flight risk to my organization? If I can drive down churn of my internal customer base, there's quite a solid saving there. So they're probably a few key trends that we see, coupled with obviously post-COVID around contact center is around agent empowerment. So making agents' lives easier. So big push in agent assist. Agent assist is driven from data, so giving the agent the right information to do their job, which lowers attrition, attrition through sickness, attrition through leaving. Attrition is a big cost to contact centers. So anything we can do to mitigate that and make the agents happier is a key trend as well.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Adi. Next question over here is
just before that, Nav, if I can add just one element, because I think this is quite important. Both Dennis and Adi have touched on it. Basically, our recommendation to the customers is obviously to start small and move fast, and then scale it aggressively as well. But one of the elements we've been seeing around the adoption of especially machine learning, deep learning type of algorithms is, in many cases, the industry have been falling into the same trap of the custom software development a couple of decades ago. So once we build a model, once we test it out with the target groups and it is performing well, we simply assume that it will continue to perform well. But the surrounding context keeps on changing, which means you may need to retrain those models, you may need to adjust the hyperparameters, you may need to add new data sources to those models as well. And this is a hindering element for the scalability, because you start deploying a model that worked perfectly fine in a number of different markets, and then suddenly after a while the model's performance starts degrading, and then there are questions around the trustfulness of those models. The answer in reality is something now I think it's the industry adopted term as well. We refer to that as MLOps. So this is implementing the combination of agile DevOps techniques and AIOps techniques into the machine learning itself, so that we continuously monitor the performance of those algorithms, and then we trigger automated workflows to be able to do the retraining if necessary, or if retraining is not fixing the problem, then identification of other data sources or data scientists or ML AI teams looking into those algorithms, triggering the necessary workflows from a CI/CD pipeline in an automated way. And one of the things we have done with AWS is we have created a template solution as an accelerator, because even though conceptually it is very straightforward, technologically from an architecture as well as process point of view, it's a complex problem to solve. Basically, we have that starter pack ready so that you can actually, any of the financial institutions can pick up that starter pack and implement it quite rapidly in their machine learning, artificial intelligence environments. The advantage here is we call the other way, the naive way of thinking that it's going to perform forever. We can actually generate returns on investment 7 to 8, sometimes up to 20 times faster versus the naive option, because any degradations from the performance point of view would be identified automatically and then will try to be addressed as automated as possible. So I think this is something that will remain to be a hot topic as a trend as well. How do we scale fast, and how do we use machine learning, artificial intelligence to solve the challenges of data and machine learning itself?
Perfect. Thank you, Emre, as well, to add on to that. In actual fact, my next question was for you as well. So it's come from Lokesh Jam at DXC. So when we speak about data-driven insights in single customer view, there's an issue of poor data quality, something that all three of you have touched on.
Definitely.
What are the measures being undertaken to improve the data quality before we start creating the single customer view? Emre, I'll start off with you, and then Dennis and Eddie, I'll come to you.
That is a very good question, and it is the in reality this is a problem that has existed forever in the data space. So how do we ensure that data quality is right? How can we make sure that we can trust the data? And one of the key advantages we have with the technologies that are available to us, and basically you've heard also Eddie referring to Snowflake and AWS combination. By bringing various data sources much easier together in the concepts of data mesh, we are able to create new workflows from a data quality point of view as well. Because one of the key challenges we've had in the past was around the overall concept of ETLs, right? So extract, transform, and load. And in many cases, the workflows and the pipelines were failing periodically, and surprising enough, in some cases, without necessarily the teams realizing that they were failing. And especially when you have a failure at the time of data ingestion, basically this triggers what we call a negative domino effect, because during the data ingestion, if you are missing certain data, or if certain data is corrupted or is not necessarily serving the purpose anymore throughout the pipeline, then the domino effect starts, and basically you have an accumulated miss from a data quality point of view. That's why we put spatial emphasis on the data ingestion element throughout the data quality chain, because we need to ensure that every data is consistently and correctly getting ingested into the expected platforms. And from there on, also having the auditability trail of those data ingestion pipelines is extremely important as well. And another important element around the data ingestion in the data quality concept is one of the key challenges of adoption of customer 360 or 720-degree view in financial institutions, and also for other use cases, is the internal lack of trust in the quality of the data. And when the data ingestion pipelines are not performing as expected, and the default response from the business side of the organization is when you are offering a new data warehouse or a new data lake solution, they go back to and check their trusted legacy environments, and they would do comparisons of certain complex calculations. And as soon as they start seeing differences, they would immediately lose their trust in that data. And then we have seen so many very expensive, large implementations failing because of that simple issue of data ingestion not necessarily being done correctly. So again, data ingestion is not enough to ensure the data quality, but that is an area where we need to start. And based on our experience, once we fix it at the data ingestion level, we are able to get a significantly higher quality much more effectively. The other element is, again, using the AI, ML, or deep learning techniques to fix the issues of the data, because we have significant amount of data available externally as well. And many of the correlations give us a very good view when the right machine learning algorithms are implemented around potential improvements of the data quality as well. And again, a very important aspect here is when utilizing those external data sources to ensure that the necessary privacy concerns are taken into consideration. But this is a trend that is enhancing the data quality quite massively, both in financial services institutions as well as in other industries as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Emre. Before I go to Dennis and Eddie, we've only got 3 minutes left, I'm afraid. We've got lots of questions over here, so we won't be able to go through all of the questions, but rest assured, I will get the answers from the panelists after this webinar and share with all the people who registered and attended this webinar the answers to your questions. So thank you very much, and apologies, we won't be able to go through all the questions. But Eddie and Dennis, if you want to just maybe spend a minute each to answer that question of poor quality of data, and we can round off.
Yeah, thanks. So I think there's kind of two things to think about here. So one is, as Emre called out, right? These have been problems that have been there since the systems came in. We have to find ways around it, and so there have been ways in which we can streamline and improve, and there's systemic ways to solve this and enhance the efficiency of systems. But there's two additional things to consider, and I think this was touched on earlier in the discussion where we talked about organizational culture. We've seen that when organizations who consider mesh architectures essentially are able to help create publishers and subscribers of data. When you create a publisher of data, you're enabling and empowering that publisher to become an owner of a product. And so very often, who have been historically controllers of, well, we have some very secretive information and we're not able to share it, and we'll give you a small snippet, or we'll give you an older snippet of the data, will now become enablers of sharing that data. So very often you see a team that might be generating a certain set of transaction patterns who are now publishers of that data to the mesh, are proud of what they've put up into the catalog. They're happy to see the subscribers of their data set, and they very often continue to invest times from their team to make sure that their data set is up to date, its quality is up to the mark, and it's streaming or is getting updated at the right rate. And so that's a very interesting trend where you enable the organization and the business owner of the data to make sure that they become owners of that data set and proud to publish. The other side of this is also synthetic data. So what we've seen as a pattern is when organizations really need to identify a machine learning model for, say, personalization, you actually pick a very specific data set that you know is working, and then you use synthetic data to replicate that to rapidly generate models. And so we've seen that as a quick pattern to start getting business outputs for business stakeholders. So I'll stop there. Over to you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis. Any final
Yeah,
thoughts?
thanks. I know. Yeah, I'll run through this bit pretty quick, but I think based on what we said before is build that trust. You know, quantify the efforts of what we're doing. Start small. Use that to build that trust with the stakeholders. Don't go too wide, and then just use that to build your business case to expand. Back to Addy's point, we have game days and things like this. These are opportunities for you to work with us and with DXC to build out what that story could be, so you can go straight to the business and earn that trust instantly. It's a very quick story about that in CX.
Perfect. No, thank you very much, Eddie and Dennis and Emery, for your time, and thank you to the audience for taking your time out of your busy schedules to attend this webinar. We wish we had half a day workshop, and maybe that should be could be a takeaway for the next day, because there's a lot to talk about within banking and financial services, both from an AWS and DXC perspective. So thank you again. Questions and answers questions that have not been answered will be shared after this webinar with the key takeaways in the next coming days. Any questions, please feel free to come back to me anytime as per my email. But thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event. Thanks.